Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. We really can't kick off this gathering of minds, hearts, and worlds without recognizing where we have gathered. That is, without recognizing that we stand upon land stolen from the people who have shaped, nourished, and celebrated it for thousands of years. As such, I would like to ask for permission to proceed from our Chumash relatives gathered here today. I now invite them to take, or rather, take back the stage. Once they come back in. How's everyone doing? Can't say the same, but I'm glad that you're at least doing well.
Very thankful to be here with all of you, thankful to the organizers. That was a song that was indigenous to this land, from the land. That song there was asking all of you in your skirts to stand up and dance, be with us here today at this conference. Hope their spiritual story, you know. Next song is an Eagle song. You got this.
And this last song is a healing song. A healing song. And Chumash, which is the Barbareño dialect of this area, and their main village is right over here. Villages used to be all over here. And they're still here. These buildings are only temporary. And I know about buildings because my house, 2 houses are gone in Montecito. So we know, we understand my Earth Mother and to the water spirit and what that means to all of us. Pay attention. I'll talk later on that. But one song is Peace and Dignity, Peace and Tranquility. Deepak is tranquility or being healthy, just be healthy. And Chumash means peace. Peace in our heart, peace in our spirit, peace in the way we walk, peace in your families, peace in your thoughts, peace in your soul and your blood, peace in your community, peace in your nation, peace in the world, peace in the universe. All these talk about peace. And that's part of the Chumash philosophy that not too many Chumash people know about. And so my son will lead it. I want to express my gratitude to this lovely lady here. She's been involved in the struggle, as we say, since time immemorial because of her ancestors in this spirit. So if you sit down, I want to say a couple words. I don't want to get tired. Just want to sit down. I'm the chair of the Barbareño Chumash Tribal Council, and also a senior captain of our Tomo, our plant canoe. In addition to that, for 28 years, been executive producer of American Indian Airwaves and KPFK. Also working with Latin America Journal, KCSB, and presently American Indian Airwaves Santa Barbara edition of KZAA, bulb-powered radio power station in Santa Barbara community in La Casa de la Raza. We want revolution. What does that mean? Revolution of the heart, revolution of the mind, revolution of the spirit, revolution in the material sense. Today is a time where we can mend and unite these wonderful speakers in this conference about combining the future for the mind and combining the future of the material conditions that gave rise to the contradiction of a president who is representing the class nature of the world of globalization at one hand, and the other hand, the mobilization of indigenous communities and nationalities of the world in order to create a vision and creating a vision of what is possible. Because it's not about theory, it's about actuality. We live in a time where in the 60s, in the Red Power days, in the 60s, in the Black Power days, in the 60s for the radical movement, in the 60s for the women's movement, in the 60s for the Chicano movement, in the 60s where when you put your finger up, you say, which way is the revolution going to be today? Which way is social change going to be today? Which way in which I'll take my community and create better housing, take my community and create better homes, take my community and build better surroundings, take my community and take care of my children, take care of my elderly, take care of the mothers, take care of the fathers, take care of our animals, take care of our relationships with the Earth Mother. This is what we're born with. This is what our creation story tells us. This is what Native people have been talking about, and now it comes full circle. And that full circle is, we're ready. Roll up your sleeves like I do in the mud. Tomorrow I'll be in the mud. Roll up your sleeves. Create and meet the challenges. Don't ever put down your effort of create that world where all worlds can exist. Create a world and where the mothers and fathers and the children can live peacefully without military, without white supremacy, without militarism, without weapons, without the oppression and exploitation of not only workers, but the Earth Mother, so we can live in harmony and we can live together and we can live and grow together and grow old together and have a world together and have true sense of happiness and well-being together and well-brighting and sobriety against sexism and all those different things that hold us back, and bring those ideas and set them aside for the future so we can live together in a cooperative manner with nature and with the spirits that surround us of our ancestors that you're all part of at this point in time. This is what we all pray for. And this is just a reminder, whether it be my father, Victor Skyago Lopez, whether it be Thomas Bonyaka, whether it be David, whether it be Philip Deere, whether it be Edward Matthews, whether it be Garfield Grassrow, or whether it be Archie Fire Leindeer, or any of those individuals that sent this message, Corbin Harney about water. This is the message that's not for me or me as an individual. I do my work, I do my share. But it's about people like Ines, people like all those other people like I mentioned, It's a collective leadership. It's a collective community. And we in the Chumash community need to get our act together, as well as our communities, whether it be all the different groups. And the reason why people don't mention it is because they're afraid of that vision, and they're afraid of the missions, and they're afraid of the class that oppresses them, and they're afraid of oppression and not liberation and not freedom. And I want to express this to everyone, that we are not afraid anymore. We cannot live in fear. We liberate ourselves with our spirit, mind, and body. We liberate ourselves not because of my words, but because of the ancestor spirits and we're our relatives, the plant and animal and insect life, and the celestial bodies, like my dad used to say, Grandma Moon, Father Sun, and the universe looks upon us, and we're with them in order to create this new vision and create this world that's possible, to make it real. So, one, which means that's it for now. And have a good conversation. I know there's some really good speakers here, so hopefully we can learn from each other.
I honestly wonder if I should say anything else. I'd like to express our deepest gratitude to our Chumash relatives for blessing us and for humbling us with their presence. I hope that this conference is but the beginning of collaboration and coordination between us, in the hopes that we can work together to reestablish autonomy, dignity, equity, justice, and resilience for Indigenous peoples here and everywhere else. Friends, colleagues, mentors, co-conspirators maybe, we'll see. Welcome to the 2018 Society Global Scholars Conference, Alter-Globalizations, Another World is Still Possible. Words cannot describe how much beer I'm going to drink when this weekend is over. But for the time being, I'm honored and delighted to say a few words on a convergence in the works for almost a year. I'll let Leila fill you in on the dirty details, but for now, I'd like to reflect on how your presence and our collective assembly here today is all too appropriate. We have come here from as near as Camarillo and Los Angeles, and as far as Berlin and Singapore. We have come from areas and ways of knowledge as diverse as literature, ethnomusicology, sociology, global studies, and indigenous studies. We are students, teachers, organizers, and community members of all kinds. We are women, queer persons, people of color, neurodiverse and disabled, from the global south and the margins of the global north. Are we then the creators of this other world we are declaring possible? In a word, no. But we could be that many more holograms, to use a Zapatista metaphor, through which another world becomes visible. I believe that we have come together because we recognize three fundamental facts. Firstly, the world is confronting growing and potentially apocalyptic ecological, political, social, and cultural crises that have been gestating for at least 500 years of colonialism and imperialism. Secondly, the false binary between globalization and anti-globalization inhibits our ability as activist scholars and basically concerned living beings to address these crises. Thirdly, and most importantly, countless marginalized individuals, communities, organizations, and movements around the globe have been challenging and transcending and continue to challenge and transcend this binary, prefiguring a host of possibilities for us all. Another world is not only possible, it is already here at Standing Rock and in Palestine, at the World Social Forum and in La Via Campesina, at the World March of Women and in Ferguson. Given then that the title of this conference is and can only be a statement of fact, How can we do our parts to co-cultivate this other world bursting into life everywhere? I'm confident that all of you will produce far more eloquent, detailed, and provocative answers to this question over the next few days than I ever could here and now. But I think that at the very least, we can ask ourselves the hardest questions possible about the systems of power that have catapulted us into this highly coveted setting, and how best we can navigate and subvert these systems of power in solidarity and communality with marginalized beings everywhere. Are we willing to go above, below, around, and through our academic fields as disciplines, instead grappling with the academy's inherent inequities to fully democratize learning and knowledge sharing? Will our activist scholar lives begin and end with our professionalization? Or will they contribute to the imperative of total, absolute, mutual liberation by any means necessary? Will we settle for stopgap solutions out of ignorance, convenience, and fear? Or will we heed Malcolm X and recognize that lasting change is healing the wound made by the blade of oppression, not pulling it out partly, not even pulling it out completely? Will we, in essence, be bystanders who are ultimately complicit in evil, or even allies who ultimately abandon our far more marginalized counterparts when they call upon us to act in their greatest times of need? Or will we be unwavering accomplices to the struggles we see everywhere and to their dynamic, ingenious, invaluable prospects for another world? A world turned upside down, a world that is still possible, a world in which many worlds can joyfully, beautifully, perpetually fit. Power and love to all of you these next 2 days, and power and love to the earth and to the wretched of the earth. Thank you, and welcome once again.
Hello, can you all hear me? Is this not working? Oh, it's on. Oh, it says battery low. Can you all hear me? Let's not use the mic then. Hello and welcome to the second annual Society of Global Scholars Conference. We are honored you're here, giving us your precious time, especially on this weekend where there is a lot going on campus. I also hope that your homes and yourselves are safe from the rain and everything else. Before we start this wonderfully exciting event, I wanted to tell you a little bit about this organization. The SGS, founded by Global Studies students, has been established to create a community for scholars of global issues, seeking to expand their perspectives, to host conferences, and hopes for bringing other global and international scholars together and to energize one another to attend conferences and highlight the presence of global studies, UCSB's Global Studies on the map. Last year, we hosted a conference entitled The Global Rise of the Right, and we proved nationalism and the emergence of fascism and anti-immigration sentiments across the globe. This year, we started thinking about communities and community building in times of great divide. We thought of the value of mobilizations that offer an alternative to the status quo, somewhat spontaneous movements and gatherings to provide another narrative. The resistance at Standing Rock, the World Women's March, the countrywide protest to Trump's travel ban, to name a few. Okay, yeah, thank you. I don't need to shout anymore. In order to reflect the interdisciplinarity of our program, we decided to frame our conference around alter-globalization narratives and invite scholars across discipline to present their alternative narrative or their alternative visions. We start with a panel on Indigenous resistance across Americas, a transnational panel on spaces of resistance and space making as dissidents, a session on the theory of resistance, on embodied experiences of resistance, a talk on environmental justice, and last but not least, a panel on defiance through differences and othernesses. We are also very honored to have Dr. Jackie Smith and Dr. William Robinson to address our keynote speeches. with Dr. Smith speaking to us about human rights and globalization, making other worlds possible by addressing local global dynamics tonight at 6 p.m. right here. And Dr. Robinson addressing the police state and the crisis of capitalism in his speech, Digital Capitalism and the Global Police State, tomorrow at 5. Along these wonderful events, we have a film screening today at noon, followed by a Q&A with the director, Sabri Wazwaz, and a roundtable tomorrow with community organizers discussing global intersectional solidarity. I think it is fitting to quote bell hooks as a way of reflecting what community building and organization mean to us. Quote, to build community requires vigilant awareness of the work we must continually do to undermine all socialization that leads us to behave in ways that perpetuate domination. Once again, welcome to our conference. We certainly hope that this will be a pleasant and educational couple of days for you, and you meet other scholars who are as excited about a better world as you are. Thank you, and before I forget, there's a sign-up sheet right in front for students who need credit for this attendance or other people who wants to keep in touch. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Leila, for those introductions. My name is George. I'll be serving as a co-discussant with Casmali. But before we get into that, I'd be remiss to kick off this panel on Indigenous Alterity and Counter-hegemonic Resistance without honoring Ines Talamantez, who's been, the inspiration for putting this panel together. Her spiritual guidance, through which I hear my ancestors and her ancestors have served as an immovable force, a mountain of knowledge and love in this past couple of years that I've known her. So I'd like to welcome her to the stage to say a couple words before we start.
It is indeed a pleasure to be here with all of you today. My knees are still shaking standing between these two beautiful Chumash singers who mean so much to me. I've spent almost pretty close to 40 years here at UCSB. And my work was to develop the field of Native American religious traditions. And since then, I've trained something like 25 PhDs in this field, and they are all over the country in tenure track appointments. And I'm very, very proud of them. This land is Chumash land. Even before the university was here, it was already considered a place of wisdom, a sacred place. I felt that. Landing here the first day, coming for an interview, it was a blue heron pretty close to the landing strip. To me, someone who grew up with her hands in the dirt, the soil, as a farm worker, the land that we walk on, that we raise our children on, that we train our students on, is sacred. We must never forget that. Missionization tried to take that away from us, just like it tried to take the land, and more importantly, our spirits. Initially, they said we didn't have souls, that we were savages, primitive. So I guess we're the first soul implants, because we do have souls. But we don't refer to them as souls. In our languages, we refer to them as our spirit. It is our spirit that guides us through life. We are already programmed for what we are supposed to do. We just need to wake up to what that is. What are your talents? What did the Creator bless you with? It brought you to this room. The room where our minds are gathered together today and our spirits are gathered together in memory of the voices of our ancestors. They left us a heritage. We Native American people know that we have to listen to the voices of our ancestors. What Annette Portillo, a young scholar, refers to as blood memory, the memory of our ancestors. What was it that they were thinking about in terms of them, of those that were following them? I know what my ancestors were thinking, that we as Apaches have to be strong of body. We have to work with our mind all our life. And most importantly, we need to develop our spirit. Today, I have been honored. I have been blessed with sacred Chumash songs. I am in that world that we're talking about. Is it possible to have this other world? I am in it. You are in it. There are many people that we need to talk with, that we need to encourage. And we cannot stop at talking. We have to take action the way we did in the 60s. My Chumash brother talked about what has been accomplished since then. I remember standing on a flatbed truck at Point Conception, fighting so that an LNG plant would not be built there. And we won. It was never built. The Chumash people came together. They realized that that is a place that spirits enter and leave the universe, a sacred place. I have talked to some surfers that surf there, my sons included. They know that Point Conception is a sacred place. They honor it. They appreciate riding on the waves that Mother Ocean provides for them. It makes their bodies strong. We need strong minds, strong bodies, strong hearts to do this work. It is not an easy task, but how wonderful I feel to see you all gathered here, fighting for this, learning about it, recognizing the harm that has been done and continues to be done to our Earth Mother. She is crying as our elders, and we cry the dark hours of the evening. We shed our tears in different ways because we know, we are aware of the damage that is being done. When will we come together as community? I'm speaking to the converted, but you have to take this message out to the others. It is essential. It is imperative. We cannot raise children in polluted environments. Mothers have to be healthy when they're pregnant. Children have to be cared for with love and compassion, guided by the mother's wisdom, not the television. I'm speaking to all of you about things that you already know, but they're so imperative in my heart and in my mind that I have to continue doing this. At 87, I have worked very hard to keep my body strong and my mind, because I know how imperative this movement is. How wonderful that we now have conferences on global studies. on Indigenous studies, on Native American studies, on women's studies. All of this has been fought for. I know, because I've been there. It takes a toll on you, on your family, on your studies, on your life's work. But we have to continue to do it. We are strong. We are smart. We are compassionate people. And we will make this happen. But we need to do it together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ines, for those powerful, evocative words and that have blessed us for not only this conference, but beyond. Will reverberate not only for this weekend, but throughout. Thank you. I think now's a fitting time to kick off this panel. Now for my formal introduction, my name is George Ygarza. I'm a second-year PhD student in the Global Studies Department. I'll be serving as a co-discussant along here with Casmali Lopez.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Casmali Lopez. I'm a local. Yeah.
So we'd like to start with a brief introduction of the panel, followed by presentations by our two panelists and our third one, which is joining us via Zoom. So today, modernity underlies the dominant discourses of the emerging field of global studies. A modernity that was conceptualized in Europe's encounter with the colonized other. Without problematizing the paradigms, analytical frameworks, and methodologies of these origins, the field of global studies ends up becoming, as a former faculty member called, a handmaiden of neoliberalism and Western modernity. Indigenous views, worldviews, emerging from what Fanon has referred to as the zones of non-being, present critical and radical counter-discourses, alter politics and new political imaginaries. Performativities of resistance are located in the very existence of many indigenous communities, struggling against the multiple processes driven by global capitalism. So this panel traverses various spatial communities, looking at the way different communities from the Andes and Turtle Island utilize place-based knowledge to confront the challenges of modernity and continual survival. Kachkani Rakmi, Chumash greeting. How do you salutation? Our common salutations in numerous indigenous communities that reaffirm life and continued existence. So this panel reminds Western academia that we are still living and we're still here. And with that, I'd like to introduce our first panelist, Mary Louise Stone. After years of cross-cultural teachings in New Mexico, Mary Louise Stone has lived 12 years in Quechua and Aymara communities around Lake Titicaca in Peru and Bolivia. She's consulted on community-run tourism with villages, universities, along with Duke University in North Carolina. In 2015, Stone completed a dissertation on Pachamama today and indications of a mother deity in the archaeological remains, as well as on gender balance and inclusive communities. As an independent scholar, Stone works in New Mexico and is part of the Camasa Weaving Wisdom community in La Paz, Bolivia. Without further introduction, Mary Louise Stone.
Thank you. And again, I acknowledge where we stand today on California Indian Chumash land. Opening her ground loom with complex burgundy designs, sitting by azure Lake Titicaca on Taquile Island in Puno, Peru. Can you hear me? Quechua elder Francisco Huaca selected 3 well-formed coca leaves, blew on them, and lifted them to the sky. Aling punchao kachun, she murmured in Quechua, may it be a good day. And she slipped this offering to the Andean Mother Pachamama into the ground beneath her loom to begin her weaving day. Beneath the modern surface, I contend, from south to north, the Americas harbor ancient alternative communities based on origin mother deities that lead to significant women's roles that build inclusive communities. Women also weave public ritual art that holds social guidelines before the eye. This American motherline heritage is reemerging into public life and forms an underlying thread of unity amidst enormous diversity in the Native Americas. Paula Gunn Allen from the Quérez Pueblo of Laguna, New Mexico, advised us to learn about our mothers, our traditions and histories, in order to know our own significance and right relation to the earth and to society. The heritage rooted over centuries and millennia on these American continents shapes the experience of all who live here, no matter how recently arrived, through the land, the spirit, and the peoples. For methodologies, when we listen to American Indians as experts on their own cultures, and here I'm with Taquile Island weavers pretending to weave, we find that ritual arts such as weaving and oral histories draw forth deep beliefs not held in the written texts or in religious institutions. To approach this diversity, I rely on Bolivia's motto of unity in diversity. When each tradition describes its own different practices, we gain objectivity and accuracy. A widespread motherline does exist. When we note the similarities of the mother-centered models, it strengthens the alternatives that they offer. Ancient and ancestral examples range from the Andes and Amazon to Mesoamerica and northern Pueblo and Haudenosaunee peoples. From the communities around Lake Titicaca, particularly Quechua, Taquile Island, and the Aymaras around Tiwanaku in Bolivia, my Andean colleagues urged me to share internationally to increase respect for their ancient spiritual culture. This mother-oriented heritage comprises powerful alternatives that reach from home management to widespread organization of society. Respectfully crediting and linking with those here before us on these American continents who built and carry the heritage contributes to the necessary healing and realigning and to mutual support. An American motherline begins with the mother of origin, and I note her qualities of thought and interrelatedness. For Quérez Pueblo people in this land, the context of God is female. She is the source and generator of meanings, Paula Allen explained. Quérez believed that thought woman pervades everything, and from her all is born. Reaching into her basket, thought woman draws out an effigy or a thought form and thinks and sings it into being. As we will see, women today bring forth from their intuition textile designs that embody social guidelines. For Andeans in this land, Pachamama is both Mother Earth and Cosmic Mother. Pacha in the Quechua and Aymara languages is time-space as a united whole. Her wholeness emerges in Proverbs. Pachamama is all that is, and we are all interrelated. Thus no one is ever alone, and we indeed form a human family. Downhill from the Andes Mountains, the roads of the upper Amazon are rivers, overhung with tangled vines and insects and bird songs, and Shipibo women's textiles teach this interrelatedness. In Pucallpa, Peru, I visited the Arevalo family women who embroider and paint the Shipibo worldview to cover skirts, textiles, ceramics, most objects, and until recently faces and bodies. The interconnecting lines on my Shipibo embroidery portray a matrix of energy uniting the larger designs. The Shipibo aesthetic begins with a long, main, twisting line that turns on itself like a serpent, going into steps or spirals and merging into new symmetrical patterns. In this specialist female knowledge, particularly of older women, 3 levels of perception intersect. In the world of appearances, designs reflect the sinuous course of the Amazon River. In the sky world, interrelated pathways connect the stars, especially in the Milky Way, the great river of stars. In Quechua, Hatumayu, in Aymara, Hatchahawida. In the inner world, the designs depict the paths of the cosmic serpent, the inexhaustible energy winding through the unconscious. Shipibo women are ritual artists who express Pachamama's interrelation of all that is, and painted on virtually all the objects and people of their culture. As complements, the widely known male shamans perceive similar designs and transfer them into healing songs that guide the consciousness during healing and vision sessions. I also met the renowned Quechua shaman Pablo Amaringo, who painted his visions. Amaringo illustrated the serpent mothers as the 3 powers: the forest mother, Sachamama, the wind, Waidamama, and the underwaters, Yakumama. In dynamic gender balance, these 3 mothers, perceived by the male shaman, parallel the 3 levels of the Shipibo women's designs: river rainforest on earth, stars and wind above, and the inner unconscious. Both women and men express Pachamama's origin essence that unites us with one thread woven on the earthly loom of life. In an American mother line, an all-embracing mother deity often leads to women guiding culture, gender balance, and economics. On Quechua, Taquile Island in Puno, Peru, I observed that only women rise to the challenge of weaving ritual cloth, done on these traditional ground looms with a 3-level warp. While men knit, sew, and weave broadcloth on upright looms. Internationally, and among Taquile people, the women's ritual cloth commands the highest value. The belts, ponchos, and bags display finely woven designs that indicate island identity and seal marriages, contracts, and ceremonies. Taquile women maintain their culture even in the world market as they negotiate modern fashion within their own tradition. Taquile Island's community care design shows these 6 sectors of the island organization, forming an inclusive whole, and it guides public consciousness as the most common ancestral woven figure. In reciprocity with nature, 3 sections lie empty and fallow to regain their fertility, while cultivated furrows usually fill the other 3 sections. In community care, every family has land to work and food to eat. Families rotate sponsoring these ceremonial offerings to Pachamama of music, dance, and ritual weavings. And perhaps these ceremonies will parallel Ryan's presentation on Muskogee Creek in Florida, we'll see. As compliments, many Taquile men excel in public speaking, yet meetings adjourn to confer with their women on decisions if they're not present. Women offer food and nurturing to the men and children, and note, give men the public space to speak. Men in their greater public role, not a superior role, but a role with public prestige, defer to the women's decisions to serve the community. As well, roles are flexible. Men cook and women hold civic office when needed or inspired. In economics, men often hand their profits over to women. In La Paz, Aymara Vicenta Mamani explained that Aymara women administer crops and seeds, sales, and profit. Social sanctions admonish the men who try to control their wives' sales, as well as the women who administer poorly. I saw husbands defer to their wives on home resources and economics, on textile sales and public activities, both Aymara and Quechua, from the northern Titicaca Basin to southern Bolivia. Further north, in Juchitán, Oaxaca, Mexico, Marina Meneses at the conference A Mother World is Possible in Toronto in 2009 explained that every Kuchitan woman has her own house, maintains her independent social position, and runs her own trade from that office. As compliments, the Zapotec Indian farmers, fishermen, and craftsmen also prefer to put their yields into the hands of women instead of selling them to anonymous brokers. Kuchitan famed women traders are noticeable in their richly embroidered clothing, with more flowers than in this painting, and now face the devastation of the earthquake last September 2017. The traders traditionally run an economy of interconnectedness. Kuchitan businesswomen permeate society with an extraordinary number of fiestas throughout the year, for saints' days, birthdays, graduations, and so forth. The reciprocity interconnects the people in tasks and attendance, in goods and services. Older women with more leisure plan their retirements and even their funerals with excellence in music and song, beauty in dress and art, eloquent speeches and abundant good food. Doña Enriqueta Contreras described the festival of La Guelaguetza. You give to me and I give to you. And it constitutes, in the Zapotec language, and it constitutes a sacred responsibility of community service. Kuchitan's extravagant fiestas of reciprocity recall Puno Peru's unending parades for anniversaries, girls' sports teams, even kindergartens, and the lavish support from friends and family for the February celebrations to the mother. In Kuchitan, motherliness is a cultural principle, and with significant results. The social bonding creates happiness and heightens respect for the women and grandmothers who host the parties. The fiestas support townsfolk, publicly appreciate local artists, and boost their sales. The region enjoys more prosperity than more modern areas, with greater misery and begging. The exploiting maquila factories were prevented from entering. And Meneses reported that the traders recently fought to keep Walmart chain stores out of their town, and won. From the mother deity and women's central roles of an American motherland, inclusive communities often result. Urban women migrants also organize for their solidarity in their communities, true to their Indian roots, such as this community on the earth, again with the star paths above and the river below. When the September 1985 earthquake in Mexico City paralyzed the government for a month, women garment workers were abandoned by the factory owners to die beneath the rubble. Seamstress Maria Hernandez told me when I visited in 1988, 100 factories got together, 6,000 people, pressure from Mexico's first international and independent women's union for worker protection and childcare. Homeless after the quake, Margarita Villanueva and her neighbors built homes on unused land and installed running water, school breakfasts, and food co-ops. Imelda Garcia told me women were the most responsible for the demonstrations in the national urban community movement, but we didn't speak in assemblies. So we got together and educated ourselves. Now at 85% of the membership, we represent ourselves. In the neighborhood with 80,000 migrants from Oaxaca, with its famed businesswomen, Clara Brugada told me, with our neighbors, we formed an affordable health center with traditional herbal prevention. For further community safety, rapists were severely and publicly sanctioned. And the neighbors brought in Alcoholics Anonymous and mediation. Weaving throughout these Mexico City women's words was the phrase, "We got together," echoing the ancestral community lifestyle. In national government, and here is a crowd near Bolivia's capital, note the textile art. In Bolivia and Ecuador, the mother's interrelated worldview entered the recent constitutions to safeguard 40 ethnicities and their life ways, as well as the rights of Mother Earth. In 2009, Bolivia's UN delegation led the designation from Earth Day to Mother Earth Day to underscore the need for the Earth's family to learn to live together. These documents strengthen the ongoing efforts to protect nature. Women have contributed to such broad-based community change before. Haudenosaunee Barbara Mann details Iroquois women's social and governing power that in the 1700s influenced the U.S. Constitution's stance, social justice, grassroots sovereignty, and egalitarianism. In the 1800s, inspired the women's suffrage movement that also fought slavery. And in the 1900s, led to second wave feminism, seeking the equal valuing of women and men. The first emblem of the United States was an Iroquoian woman, commonly called Columbia, and symbolizing strength. Bringing the circle around again to Pachamama, her interrelation radiates not only in the Amazon Shipibo textiles, and in the community care design of Taquile Island and Lake Titicaca, but also in Bolivia's national indigenous flag, the Huipala, which is also on the wall. As in quantum physics, Andeans note that we're all related through the same Pachamama's energy that flows through us all. The flag shows the white light in the center that holds the potential for all manifestation. And as the light refracts, it flows out in the rainbow colors. Each color maintains its own unique wavelength, constantly changing and balancing like the rainbow water droplets, or like Bolivia's 40 ethnicities. The flag, like this methodology, embodies the Andean motto, unity and diversity. Here again, women's ritual arts, and men may participate, express the mother's interrelationship, prominently displayed at every hamlet gathering, every regional government meeting, and every national mobilization. In ritual and political processions, women often lead the groups with the flag of diversity. Though not utopian societies, and facing great challenges from the last 500 years of European dominance and overturn, a widespread and ancestral motherland does indeed reemerge into view, south to north. These viable American alternatives arise from both rural indigenous communities and urban migrants. They're also relevant to modern society, though we may need to adjust some habits. Modern people may not farm or embroider, yet we nurture friends and family through teaching and herbal remedies, and we build communities. We emphasize our economic power, local and reciprocal. Guiding society with these long-lived values is needed, perhaps with symbols of inclusive communities. These concepts can empower our leadership and root in the American continents. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Dr. Leonardo E. Figueroa Holland. He's the chair and associate professor at the Department of Political Justice and Global Studies at Westminster College in Salt Lake City, Utah. His work focuses on transformational alternatives to global crises based on transdisciplinary research that combines critical global studies, intercultural, international relations, indigenous studies, global political ecology, agroecology, food sovereignty, decolonial and post-colonial, and depatriarchal gender, two-spirit studies, and world systems analysis. His writings have been published in the Journal of World Systems Research, Perspectives on the Global Development and Technology, Studies in 20th and 21st Century Literature, Interventions, International Journal of Postcolonial Studies, and the Journal of Critical Education and Policy Studies. The UNESCO Journal of Higher Education and Society, and the volume of Social Movements and World System Transformation, edited by Jackie Smith, Michael Goodhart, Patrick Manning, and John Markoff, among others. He is currently working on a book project titled Indigeneity and Planetary Politics, and an edited volume with Dr. Abigail Perez Aguilera titled Abya Resurges, Indigenous Ecologies as Alternatives for the Anthropocene Planetary Crisis. So he'll be joining us by Zoom in a bit. Leo, hi. Can you hear us? You might be muted, Leo.
Can you
Yes,
see me?
yes. Now we can hear you. We can see you.
Can the audience see the PowerPoint?
Yes. Just you need to click, I think, share your screen so we can pull it up on.
Oh, I'm in the okay. So okay, give me a second.
Yeah.
I need to shift that. And let me shift to the other two. But can you use my PowerPoint? All right, so you know what I need to? I actually need to shift another computer.
Okay. Sounds good. Hello.
I'm not sure where you. Oh, share screen. Okay, I see now. There we go. Are you able? Okay. I'm not sure where you go to share screen. Okay. There we go. Are you able?
Leo, would it be possible to use headphones so we don't have to?
Headphones, okay. Headphones, okay.
It's a little delayed. I think the feed is a little delayed. All right, Leo, we have your PowerPoint up, so you can start the presentation whenever you're ready.
Good morning to everybody. I first want to apologize for not being able to.
Leo, sorry, can you mute the live stream? Okay, thanks.
So, good morning to everybody. I'm sorry that I'm not able to be there with you today. George, could you turn around the webcam so I can see the audience?
I'm gonna try.
So, the reason I'm not able to be there with you today is because my wife and I have been blessed with a baby that is soon to come, and we need to be here. We can't travel, so I would really want to be there, but I can't. So first of all, I want to thank you all for putting this conference together. It's a great initiative. I want to offer thanks to the Chumash folks who gave the blessing to the event and inspired us with a moving speech that forces us to reflect on the need for action today. I want to thank the land and Mother Earth for making our lives possible. and for enabling us to convene with each other in this communal setting. So my presentation is Decolonizing Food Systems, and this is a project that I have been working on with some colleagues that are not able to be here with us today. And what I'm going to be presenting throughout this time is some of the research that we have been doing, some of the field research that we have been doing throughout the Americas with indigenous food justice and food sovereignty movements that are trying to recover indigenous knowledges to foster ecological agriculture as an alternative to food crisis and environmental crisis and migration crisis. The image that you see here in the PowerPoint is a work of art referring to the Zapatistas' integrated farming systems. One of the virtues of Zapatista projects is their deliberate attempt to revitalize food-related practices that restore ecosystem integrity, biodiversity, and enable climate change mitigation, and enable people to stay within communal relationships. So I'll be talking a little bit about that. So in this next slide, what you're seeing is the contents of the presentation. First, I'm going to briefly revisit some of the problems with the dominant food system, with the globalized corporate food regime, and some of the environmental and social issues that has led to. Then I'm going to be talking about how indigenous revitalization movements are converging with food sovereignty movements to decolonize food practices through indigenous food systems and agroecology. Then I'm going to spend most of my time talking about what some of the organizations are doing on the ground as forms of resistance, beyond just challenging the dominant systems. They're creating a material basis for autonomy that is based on the land. And of course, all systems ultimately has to be based on our relationship to Mother Earth and our relationship to Mother Earth through food. On the image that you have there on the poster refers to the term used by continental indigenous movements, Ygarza, land in full plenitude, which is the Chumash term from the indigenous peoples of Panama. Ygarza means land in full plenitude or plentiful life in, so which refers to the rich biodiversity, the rich cultural diversity of the continent, a term that has been used to mobilize indigenous peoples throughout the Americas. So in this next slide, we're all familiar at this point that we're facing a number of systemic crises, which stem from 500 years of a globalizing colonial capitalist patriarchal and heterosexist system that has sought to eliminate all alternative life ways that could contradict the logic of accumulation, expansion, and domination. And some of the most visible crises, of course, are the environmental and climate crisis. Among them, we particularly want to notice the fact that we're living through the sixth mass extinction, which is largely the result of globalized industrial civilization that is devastating biodiversity and that marginalizing races of life that have, since time immemorial, sought to nurture that biodiversity. There's also a number of economic inequality crises where people are being deprived of their livelihood over the course of centuries, different cycles of accumulation by dispossession, land grabbing, ocean grabbing, water grabbing. On the one hand, on the other hand, the increasing concentration of wealth. We of course are seeing food system crisis. Contrary to many mainstream assumptions, it's not a lack of food. We're overproducing low quality food systems, which are badly distributed, and we're depriving the food producers of the land base on which they depend to maintain sustainable livelihoods. And that is being substituted by energy-intensive fossil fuel resource depleting agro-industrial systems. All of these are leading second sets of crises, particularly small-scale farm workers, indigenous peoples, peasants are being displaced, forced to migrate, they're becoming economic, environmental refugees, so we're still expanding the planet by this capitalist system. We're of course seeing health crises as people are deprived of their land base and their accessibility to healthy nutritious food, but of course, different forms of scarcity that is created by the very system, and that it makes it difficult for this community to reproduce their traditions, their way of life, their spiritualities, which have for centuries and millennia sustained the health of the planet. Not surprisingly, all of this has led to political crises, which are increasingly the form of reactionary authoritarian politics that are seeking to maintain the expansion of the system, notwithstanding its obvious systemic limits in environmental and social terms. And so it's obvious that this displacement of people for local land-based migration is now being received in countries of the global north through a reactionary racist authoritarianism. This image of GRAIN, an organization that fights for seed biodiversity, very much reflects the kind of crisis that we're facing here. The image of how metropolitan centers of capital accumulation based on the expansion of commodity culture consumption and increasing place, and on land grabs to introduce monocultures of cash crop exports that are only benefiting the consumer, the minority consumer classes of the urban centers in the global north. On the other hand, this heavily industrialized monocultural system is displacing peasants, it's displacing indigenous peoples, it's devastating the biodiversity of the land, it's destroying the carbon, and it's accelerating all sorts of crises, including climate crisis, migration crisis, and energy depletion crisis. So what are some of the issues with the contemporary food system that are particularly salient? One of them is that, well, 2 billion people suffer from malnutrition, even though the global economy already produces enough calories to feed over 12 to 14 billion people, which would be the population expected by the year 2050. So it's obvious we're already producing more than enough food. A lot of this food is produced still by small farmers, indigenous workers, and some of this food is being produced by large-scale agriculture, low quality food, just calories. One of the things that we also find is that most of the people who are living hunger and malnourishment actually live in countries that are net food exporters. Through the process of colonization and neo-colonialism and structural adjustment programs, many of the food exporting countries continue to be food exporting countries, but basically all of their production is channeled towards the global markets, and it includes the producers access to the very food that they've been producing, such that 80% of the nearest people reside in developing countries, while they produce over 70% of the global food supply. Another thing that we need to keep in mind is that the globalized corporate food regime is taking over more and more land, such that at this point in time, monocultures, industrial monocultures, cover 80% of global arable land, and they produce, depending on calculation, between 25 to 50% of global greenhouse gas emissions. On the other hand, small-scale farmers with only access to 20% of the fertile land are producing more than 50% of the food consumed in the global south, and could very well produce 80% of the food that people consume in the global south, and could very well the majority of the food that people consume around the world. It's no surprise that La Via Campesina, the largest organized social movement in the world that includes peasants and farmers from upwards of 80 countries, is advocating for indigenous ecological agriculture and agroecology as an alternative to the devastating effects of the industrial food system. Indigenous agroecology and the small-scale agroecology is far more efficient, and more than anything, it restores ecosystem diversity and produces food without using artificial input, without using fossil fuels, without producing the massive greenhouse gas emissions, while also maintaining the carbon sinks. One of the really visible examples of this is what Victor Toledo calls the biocultural axiom, which many scholars have noted. The last remaining biodiversity hotspots in the world are all hotspots in which indigenous peoples are still able to maintain their lifestyle, their traditional spirituality, their way of working the land and caring the land. Traditional indigenous territories now encompass up to 22% of the world's arable land, but concentrate 80% of the world of the planet's biodiversity. So this is a mind-blowing statistic that the only biodiversity left is because indigenous peoples have resisted and insisted in maintaining a land-based culture and spirituality that is rich in the concept of biocultural diversity. And so basically the alternative to what we're facing is to, in terms of the global crisis of the food system, the environmental crisis, is to commit heavily to indigenous revitalization of knowledges, decolonization, agroecology, food sovereignty, coupled with intersectional emancipation, because of course, restoring control of the land to women for the traditional keepers of knowledge and spirituality goes hand in hand with restoring biodiversity. So I'm going to be shifting to some of the organizations that I've been conducting research with that have taught me extensively about how to actually convert resistance into creative alternatives. The first one is Unitierra in Oaxaca. The individual on the upper left-hand side is Gustavo Esteban. He calls himself a deprofessionalized intellectual who abandoned mainstream university systems because this only reproduced the coloniality of knowledge, Eurocentric knowledges, patriarchal knowledges in the service of a technocratic capitalist industrial system, and basically established with a collaboration with a lot of activists in Oaxaca, an organization called Unitierra, which doesn't impose a top-down curriculum, but instead basically puts itself at the service of the knowledge production demands of local communities, such as youth movements, indigenous movements, women's movements, etc. On the lower right-hand corner, there's an image of Zapatista people in Zapatista indigenous land, indigenous workers on their land base, recreating what was known as the Maya forest gardens. Ancestrally, the way that Maya people, oh, I should say there's an Unitierra in Oaxaca too, and there's an Unitierra in Chiapas, so they are both linked together. Both Zapotec culture and Maya culture used to rely on a system called the forest garden system. And the purpose of the forest garden is not primarily or exclusively to produce food, but to create biodiverse ecosystems which nurture the cycles of reproduction of the land and sustain the people who live in there, and the role of to be nurturers, which is embedded in the spirituality. Unitierra has done a lot of work to restore Zapotec agroecological knowledge, work with communities, like in the left-hand, lower left-hand corner, the images from Unitierra Huitco, which is a Zapotec community where the local women have organized their own learning centers with alternative knowledge production and indigenous revitalization. So basically what this organization is doing is, instead of imposing a top-down curriculum in the service of bureaucratic education, enabling instead indigenous communities, women's movements to restore autonomy by revitalizing indigenous knowledges. And I'm going to skip the video to talk about another amazing place in Guatemala, near the region of Tecatitlan, a sacred lake of the Maya people of the region. This place is called the Mesoamerican Institute of Permaculture. It is a place that is deliberately dedicated to restore autonomy by creating a food justice, food sovereignty based on ancestral Maya knowledge, again, based on revitalizing what's called the Maya forest garden. To skip to an image of the Maya forest garden, there's an amazing book which I recommend to everybody by Annabelle Ford and Ronald Nye, titled The Maya Forest Garden, 8 Millennia of Sustainable Cultivation of the Tropical Wetlands. What this book basically tells us is that for the largest period of Maya cultural evolution,
the tropical biodiversity of the region was created and sustained and nurtured by the agroecological practices of Maya and indigenous peoples, whose system is based on what's called the Milpa cycle. I'm not going to go into detail, but basically it's a closed cycles of ecological restoration in the service of food production and biodiversity conservation. Instead of creating monocultures, basically the Maya people were restoring and nurturing ecosystems whose species also serve human needs, but not exclusively human needs. They also serve just species biodiversity, plant, animals, soil, fertility, etc. So at the Mesoamerican Institute for Permaculture, what they're doing is restoring the Maya calendar, restoring Maya spirituality, working with local communities of indigenous farmers to shift away from industrial agricultural processes to resist the attempt by the state entities and corporations to introduce pesticides and artificial inputs, and instead to restore the ancient practice of Maya forest gardens, which are incredible carbon sinks, which maintain the autonomy and sovereignty of indigenous peoples. And so in this slide, there's three pictures. The individual on the right hand, I think the right hand is Gregorio, one of the indigenous agricultural knowledge holders, who showed us around the way they work with local communities to restore the kind of forest gardens that you find the image right in the middle. These forest gardens, if you walk into them, they look like a natural rainforest, but it's a work of art that could only be possible as the result of Maya ancestral knowledge. In contrast to what you see on the far left image, is a land plot in which the local farmer accepted the influence of the state entities and the companies to introduce artificial inputs. That local farmer ended up having a number of problems with soil erosion and eventually shifted to work with the Mesoamerican Institute of Permaculture because they were convinced, basically indigenous knowledge and restoring indigenous knowledge is the way to autonomy. The final organization that I'm going to be talking about with this time of land is the Andean Project of Present Technologies in Peru. The Andean Project of Present Technologies, what it seeks to restore is the system of complementary interdependence between ecological regions that existed prior to colonization and that has been sustained through different forms of resistance by the indigenous peoples of the Andes. One of the things you see here, and this is a map of Peru, but if you take all of the Andean region without the colonial boundaries, if you take Bolivia, Peru, Ecuador, this region is one of the most mega diverse regions in the world, and its mega diversity has been nurtured, sustained, and used responsibly by the indigenous peoples of the region through a system called called by anthropologists vertical zonation, which entails the reciprocal exchange of produce from different regions in complementary ways according to Andean spirituality. And this organization, the Andean Project of Present Technology, what it does is basically work with the communities so that they can decolonize the relationship to the land and restore their old settlement patterns, and also protect whatever is from their farm, from their food production systems, and restore the system of complementary relationships between different ecological zones, between different biomes, which was the kind of system that existed pre-colonization and even before, way before the Inca took control of the region. So basically, the purpose of this organization is to shift away from the notion of resistance as merely contestation, but in turn, but actually shift to resistance as restoring the basis of autonomy by decolonizing knowledge and making sure that indigenous knowledge works to create ecosystem biodiversity that promotes human autonomy and thereby prevents people or enables people to not have to migrate. It enables them to restore dignity in indigenous culture. It enables all of us to basically have viable alternatives that have existed for thousands of years that will get us beyond the current crisis of the colonial capitalist system that we're facing. So I want to finish with this concept that is used by many cultures around the world. For indigenous across the Americas, I'm sorry, and also shared by people around the world, is the concept that the purpose of human life is to ensure that the cycles of life regeneration continue. The purpose of life is, the purpose of human life is not to dominate nature, but to do everything in our power to regenerate the cycle of life in Mother Earth and ecosystems and animal economical cycles, etc. This concept is known as plentiful life, often translated poorly as living well or bien in Spanish. It basically means fostering lush life, fostering a life of rich diversity of cultures and peoples, without which we cannot exist. And in Maya, it is termed Casmali, in Aymara, Sumacaña, in Quechua, Sumacausai, in Guarani, Nandereco, and in Anishinaabe, Ygarza. So this is the kind of concept that should guide us, that our role is to foster the richness of life, and we're not here to dominate nature, we're here to ensure that this richness of life continues in order to sustain others and sustain us as humans. With that, I'd like to end. Like people say in the great Atizan region of Guatemala. It's been a pleasure to be with you.
So next up, we have Ryan Booth. He's cultures, American traditions, families, music ensemble. And the Midland documentary company. Well, thank you all for those wonderful presentations. Now I'd like to start. We're trying to bring back Leila, join us for the Q&A. Okay, Leila's there.
Hello?
Hi, Leila. So we just concluded with the last presentation. I found several themes throughout. Definitely this interconnected ecologies throughout the Americas, in the natural, cultural environment discussed, the fabulations, the motherline that lies below the modern surfaces that Mary discussed, and the resurgences that you covered across different regions in Haryana. So I'd just like to open up the floor and see if anyone starts off with some questions or some comments, some stories they'd like to share. We can decolonize the space and share some evaluations or some stories, some commentary, some questions.
I was wondering, well, first of all, thank you all for your presentations. A lot of good information and ideas there. I was wondering, where do you see the intersections between presentations and how that informs how you see these fabulations, connectedness with our mothers and our motherland, and food sovereignty, how they intertwine with each other, and how those can inform you're moving forward with the ideas and the actions of these ideas. So, anyone who wants to go first?
Are you going to say anything? I'm trying to think where I'm supposed to look forward to forget to see us.
Sure, I can start. I'm glad to start. So a lot of the stories that I gathered from visit and learning with indigenous peoples and their local land bases having to do with restoring ecosystem biodiversity through indigenous knowledges would not be possible without underlying basis of a different spirituality, a different cosmology, a different notion of our place in time, the cycles of time, and the futurity, the futures that are enabled by a particular way of life, which is committed to fostering relationships and companionship, as was stated in the last presentation. One thing that we often don't discuss, even when we discuss about the richness of indigenous knowledges and the richness of indigenous practices, is that what makes them rich is not the techniques or the methods themselves or the particular actions, but with a deeply intimate emotional connection to a notion of spirit that is grounded in our everyday relationship with other persons, human and non-human. So it is the spirituality that makes this ways of life be committed to the beauty of life in and of itself, not in the service of human interest. It is the cosmology held by the mothers, passed on for generations. It is the stories that tell us about our responsibilities in simple ways, yet with very complex implications. And I think this kind of outlook is often not brought into so-called decision-making discussions or academia or policy, and in a way it's sort of inaccessible, immeasurable, because you cannot talk about it until you're embedded in the community and live through it. And so long as we're enclosed in our bureaucratic systems, master of nature, we will be unable to go anywhere beyond mere description. So decolonization requires emancipation from institutions that hold us back from the intimate love of this spirituality and plentiful life. And those are the stories that were told by the centers.
I remember what Ines said, that we are and can be living in a different world now. And I think when you go to some of these communities or listen to the stories or participate in other ways, that even though we look out and see the same thing, we can be living in a different world that is relation with seen and unseen beings. I like what Leo said, returning to the land to the care of women and men, women as knowledge holders, or spiritually aware people as knowledge holders, both women and men. I'm really inspired by these presentations, and I would leave it at that.
I was quite excited to hear the first two presentations that did not go first, frankly. Especially because one of the things that I found particularly about your presentation, Leo, and about yours, Mary, is, I'm sorry, Louise, Mary Louise, let's stop there, was that we're coming at this decolonizing project from three broadly different perspectives, but as the two of you both mentioned, there are these floating themes between them, and one thing that none of us really explicitly talked about, but talked around, is what decolonization is. There's a wonderful article published not too long ago by two education scholars that explicitly defines decolonization as land. Giving land back to giving land, receiving land, indigenous peoples receiving land back, getting land back. It's explicitly land-based. Because of course the Southern Colonial Project was all about taking away land, and it's still about land control. And one of the things that I think we all three of us that are speaking around is this idea that decolonization is not just land itself, not just the physical acres, but it's the relationships that exist between the persons, human and non-human, that exist and live and relate and love on that land. So it's not just this concept of property, but it's the idea of relationships that are constituted by land. And that was one thing that I was quite tickled to hear coming from all three of us, but none of us actually dove right into, so I want to make sure that got said.
Within that discussion on land and spiritual being in relation to nature, there seems to be, at least in my view, a great contradiction between those realities of being with nature, being with our motherland, and I think you sort of start going into this in your evaluations, the contradiction between that and urbanization and the ecologies of urbanization. So I was wondering, within that sort of that contradiction, where do you see moving forward, both in returning land and reclaiming ecology in urbanization, and how to basically urbanization versus these themes that we were seeing inside of your presentations.
If y'all don't mind, I'm going to dive in here first. You bring up the point that, of course, I reference in this paper, ritualists living in New York City versus folks who presumably are in North Florida living the relationships with their very rural kin there. And I did that deliberately because out of the conversations with the political elders and community members, one of the things that came up is that this project of decolonization is not going to be a single single event. It's going to be a series of small events, a series of small actions that accumulate. that was their perspective. And moving, changing, altering a population the size that lives in New York City, a population that lives in Los Angeles County, even a population in a county larger than most states in the United States nation state, is not going to happen quickly. So acknowledging that, and also acknowledging that although urbanized, various metropolitan centers around the country are also on indigenous land that needs to be decolonized and de-urbanized, or acknowledging the relationships that exist there, which might be both or neither, that dichotomy I see is related but separate. And my sense was that the elders who were communicating with me were viewing those as separate things. The fact that urbanization can be changed to fit a decolonial goal, but not necessarily change the fact that it's New York City or Los Angeles City or Houston or. Did that make any sense coming out of my mouth?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I think personally, like my own commentary on that would be, I think that we don't have, I think there's, sorry, I'm sort of, I'm going to make my point.
I was doing the same.
These are immense like spaces and spatialities that need to change, but I don't think we can afford time in those changes. I think there's an incredible urgency to the necessity of very fast and devastating attacks to capitalism and capitalist spatiality and its relationship with ecology. So within that, the logic, the fundamental underlying logic within urban areas, it might not be able to change like overnight, right? But I don't think that within the temporal context, we don't have time to remain there. And similarly, the underlying logic within cities requires their abolition for, in the current sense and spatiality that cities are, requires their abolition for decolonization. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I have a question to any of the panelists or fellow discussants. I guess a thread that I'm noticing in the communities that, in particular, the two of you brought up was that they, in order to survive, they had to hide. So when you talk about, the Zapatistas, and you talk about the Native folks that you were talking about, is that they had to go underground, whether it was by performing whiteness, whether it was by, the Zapatistas' decades-long effort of building an army. And I'm wondering, again, in the context that we're in the belly of the beast, in, the United States, I'm curious, again, I think it's more of, I don't know, I think it's just, what I tend to push for is an explicit expression of the necessities for underground movements in building militancy, in building skills that are, just like, are going to be necessary to combat the huge beast that is imposing all of the suppression and is cutting, indigenous people off and all people off from a healthy relationship with the land. And so I'm wondering if y'all can talk more about those methods of survival and moving past being in the shadows, moving past being underground. When you talk about the fabulations, the stories of what it will be in the future, those are beautiful and those are inspiring, but I think we're not there. And so getting there is, I think, what jeopardizes, those ideas of getting there and those very explicit explanations of how it's possible to seize that land, because no one's going to give it to anybody. no one's just going to take it. It has to be seized in a very definite manner. So I guess I'd like to hear, I mean, unless it jeopardizes your jobs, even if it jeopardizes your jobs, I'd like to hear what folks' opinion is on that, because I feel like that's just being like not elaborated on, and I think there's, you know, a lot of intellectual understanding of what it could be like, but not exactly how we can get there.
If nobody else wants to start, I'll go. So I want to make the two questions that were set out right now. One on urbanization and the one on recall with the plan, or retaking the plan. The one thing about urbanization that we need to remember is that it was a forced project. It was a short-term process of dispossession through the use of coercion that happened over the course of the last few centuries. From the enclosures in Europe, to the revoluciones in Latin America, to the restorations in North America, urbanization is a short-term experiment in human settlement patterns that has no precedent in human evolutionary history, and that puts us in a very, very vulnerable position as a species to create a monoculture, basically a single way of life in a world that is supposed to be by diversity. If that single way of life fails, or ends up destroying its land base, there will be no alternative. What we have been doing through urbanization is not only relocating people to take lands in the service of capital accumulation, we've also been destroying the knowledge base that enables us to think in a different way. And the last remaining knowledge holders we are targeted backward, undeveloped, etc., indigenous people, right? And that's why we have to do that. That's why they fled. That's why indigenous folks fled to the mountains. And they went into hiding because they understood that the cycle brought power and ideology that was opposed to the principles of life and its diversity. And the process of hiding in storytelling and prophecy is a process of strategic preparation for waiting. It is not a simple, taking up arms and retaking land, not unless we first restore the knowledge that people. So it's the destruction of knowledge that is the most important. Here that first we have to build the capacity of people to release or sort of give up on their current way of life, or at least in enough numbers, for the counter-hegemonic movements to be engaged in what Gramsci called war maneuver. But what's at stake here is that, and as many prophecies have said, as we come to the end of a colonial cycle of destruction, we've had to work on the war of position. We have to work in building the space where people know what to do once they take the land, right? That's an important part of what all these movements are doing, including some as they waited till 1994, and once they could move strategically, they did it. But first we have to build the knowledge, the land base, to know how to create an alternative lifestyle. And what Zonouzi did in a relatively small scale in the region has to be done in a broader strategic scale, so that many of us who have no knowledge of how to live spiritually on a land base are actually able to do it. So there's my 2 cents.
Thank you. So what I would bring out is not exactly an answer to your question, but to point out how people live in urban areas in La Paz, Bolivia. They're really small, they're the U.S. cities, but the migrants, the Aymara migrants in El Alto La Paz, live in the city, work, do whatever, but they always go home to sow their potatoes and other crops. And they always go home to harvest and cultivate in between. They always go home to perform their dances, which are really important in the community, their community rituals and getting together. And they go home to hold public office, to serve the community. They may be elected on a rotating basis. You don't always know when you're coming out, but they step up to the responsibility.
And of course, they perform activities in the city, all those administrative things that have to happen. So it's a constant back and forth. Sometimes the dances are done in the city. The same dances, maybe different kind of costumes because you have different materials, but it's no continuum of life.
I don't honestly know that I have anything to add to what you guys have already said. They hit many nails on the head far better than I feel like I do, so I'm glad there was correct.
A comment?
But it's just more of kind of like a criticism, I guess it could be. I feel as academics or whatever you may call yourself, you have a duty to the movement, and kind of along the same lines as was said earlier, we need to start figuring out ways to go from underground to above ground. And by that, I mean creating space where we can talk about the physical act of reclaiming the land, not just, I understand that part of it is imagining, that's a huge part of it, and reimagining, but I think that space is safe. There's a lot of space to talk about those things in the current context, but there is not a lot of space to talk about like the physical act of reclaiming land in these spaces. So that's my criticism. I feel like y'all have a duty to, by whatever means, to start creating these discussions of what is it going to take to reclaim the land so that eventually we'll get to it,
So unfortunately, we run out of time, so we're gonna leave it there. I really like the critical interventions. I think what we strive to do with this conference, this panel, is create those sort of leverages to bring these conversations and develop these sort of these fostering of ideas, these cultivating these radical imaginaries for practice and actual action, outside of the institution as well as inside the institution. I draw from Andean cosmology, this idea of what's called the Machacuti, right? Which translates basically a social upheaval, which occurs every 500 years. And I do believe we're on the cusp of this social transformation, right? Where ideas of flourishing are emerging from the maroon communities, from the mountains, where indigenous communities have fled to, where fugitive slaves fled to and created and cultivated mutual aid and solidarity. And we're seeing a lot of this in the institution. And I think scholars such as yourselves and the audience here are presenting these radical interventions for transformation. With that, I'd like to conclude the panel and moving forward, hoping to build stronger connections and solidarity movements for transformation. So that brings us an end to this panel. We will be holding a coffee break until noon. We'll be continuing with the film screening and the Q&A until 1 p.m. We'll be holding lunch here at the Mosher Alumni House. Thank you.